Hello, everybody. We're back with the Martial Arts Experience. I know we've been a little bit of delayed for the last couple of weeks, but we're so excited to have our amazing guest today. So I'm not going to waste any time. I'm going to bring her on right now. Maria Tran, all the way from Australia. How are you today?
I'm feeling good. Thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of your show.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So, Maria, tell our viewers a little bit about yourself. How did you get started in the film industry?
I got started possibly through, this is probably 15 years ago, where I liked the idea of film and acting, couldn't afford to do it. And so me and my mates who go to martial arts school, and we just come together on the weekends and we just make these short films, short fight, sequences, and upload it on to YouTube. And at that time we got picked up by a sort of broadcaster, a TV network, and they
Okay.
wanted to make that sort of sequence on for a TV show. And then we just kept on going from there. Yeah.
Wow. And this was all based out of Australia, correct?
Yes, out of Australia.
Awesome. Awesome. Now, your first project, talk about your first project that came out. Let's tell us a little bit about your first project that came out.
The very first project, which was probably 15 years ago, was called Maximum Choppage, which was Australia's first Kung Fu comedy feature film.
Okay.
It took 4 years to make. And it was just, again, a bunch of friends getting together on the weekend and just figuring out fight sequence, figuring out script and story. And we ended up making this feature film that later on ended up becoming a $1.4 million TV show on ABC. So it
Wow.
got optioned and it became a bigger thing from that. But to be honest, from my experiences, making stuff that you have more ownership and control, it's more fulfilling, because once another production company picks it up and the networks pick it up, they end up hiring people that they want, and then the essence of what you created is kind of gets lost. But it was still a great experience to be on that show.
Awesome. Awesome. Now tell us a little bit about your martial arts background. When did you start training, and how did you find that correlating over into your film, your film that you did?
So I started training because during school I got bullied by sort of the local kids in the school, and then once I got home, my parents looked at me, and they kind of looked at me, and I'm all disheveled, and they're like, you know what, we're going to put you into martial arts school so you can learn some skills. So my first practice was Taekwondo, and once I started, I felt more confident. I didn't have to walk and look down, and didn't feel like I was always out of place. I felt like as if I belonged. And I feel like when you have more understanding of your body, you seem to be able to give off an energy that is not, the predators won't come. They won't want to mess with you. So after I did martial arts, I never got into any fights at all. So that was quite interesting. And I did it Taekwondo a little bit competitively. And then after that, I then got into like Shaolin Kung Fu, Vietnam, Hapkido, bits. And I dabbled in bits. And what I realized was that I in terms of performing it, doing it as an athletic, I don't have that sort of like gusto, but I do love performance. I do love acting, and I was able to correlate that to acting, because I remember one of my sparring competitions that I did, and this was in the later date. I was like more performative than actually doing the actually fighting. So it's like, it was like people were like, dude, you like we're watching a kung fu movie. Well, what's with your reactions? I'm like, oh shoot, because that's what I've been watching, like Jackie Chan stuff. Oh, like I was over exaggerating while competing, and I'm like, okay, maybe I'm not good for competing, but maybe this is probably good for screen. So I was
Right.
able to kind of like transcend, like move into screen, and then learn more skills. And with anything that you do, the more you do, the better you get. So the first few films that you make, they're naturally going to be crap, okay? But as you keep on making them, and
Get
you
it better.
just get better, you learn things. You're like, oh, this angle doesn't look good, or the lighting should be here. So I learned everything, all my skills on the job. And for me, being a female woman, a lot of times we're quite passive in, I would say, the action film genre. We're either in front of the camera, we don't necessarily usually choreograph stuff. We just kind of wait to be told what to do. But for me, I got a chance to be able to get physical, to really go into space, work with different bodies, and then create and then shoot things and then show them what it looks like on camera. So that's sort of my reputation in Australia.
Maria, what do you feel? Was there a specific art or style that you feel transcends and helps you better during your fight sequences and kind of plotting them out? Or is your fight style more of a mix of everything?
I personally think it really depends, because a lot of the times for me, when I do fight scenes, I wouldn't say I'm athletic. Like, there are much more better martial artists out there for sure, 100%. I know my skill sets. Okay. But what I do know is that when I'm on camera, I know how to project a certain grit, a certain emotion, as well as understand how, like, especially all your, I call it the money shots, okay? Because a lot of times, like, you can do amazing fight sequences, but if it looks like a previs, it will still look like a previs. So you got to know when the money shot comes in, what the emotion, how to convey it. And also, I'm very good at understanding storytelling within choreography, in terms of allowing different characters to have stakes in
Okay.
them and what they are and how they relate to each other and how that relationship correlates into the different moves that they choose. So that's
Wow.
sort of what I'm good at. But at the same time, it came with experience. I was able to work over in China. I worked on a Roger Corman project that was directed by Anthony Sito, who directed Wushu, which was produced by Jackie Chan. So I was able to be on set there and really learn about, shots, as well as storytelling, as well as the differentiation of a stunt team, and
Okay.
also particularly what an action director does.
Right.
Because you can have stunts, you can have all the martial arts movement, but if
Right.
it doesn't really have a good action director, you can't, you don't, you watch it and you're like, it's just movement, cool
Right.
movement, but you don't really feel for the character. Yeah.
Right. Wow. Now, what is your preference as far as producing, directing, action director? What is your preference if you had to pick?
If I had to pick, I would say, this is strange, right? It's dramatic acting.
Really?
It's actually
Okay.
dramatic acting, because after I worked on Paramount Plus's series Last King of the Cross as a crime drama, I was playing along across side Tim Roth, who was in
Oh yeah.
Reservoir Dogs and these big shows, and I learned a lot about dramatic acting, and I really enjoyed it because it was so scary.
Wow.
Whereas I think action stuff is what I love. I have so much fun. I feel comfortable. I feel so comfortable, right? It's like family when I do an action genre thing. Particularly now, more so directing, because I've been on so many projects, action projects, where I could go in and if I'm not the director, if I'm not a part of the directing team, I can just see it fall apart. And a lot of times they go, "Oh, how do you know?" I'm like, "Because I'm editing in my head." Like, each time we do an action sequence or whatever, I'm already editing. And
Mm,
that's the skill I learned over in Asia, because in Asia it's like you can't just come and go, "Oh, I'm just gonna direct." It's like you need to know how to edit it. You After you finish shooting that day, after dinner, you go straight into the editing room and you edit that piece, you show the producers. If it's bad, man, you're in trouble. You know what I mean? Because
right.
it's everything's on you. Whereas I think sometimes in the Western world, and if there's a lot of budget, I think there's always room for people to kind of fluff in. I've noticed, I've been on projects where the director has no idea, right? He or she has not a clue, but he or she can pretend that they know what they're doing and they
Right.
still do the job. But
Right.
when it comes to the film itself, it's so bad. You're like, what? What
Right.
is this? What
Yeah.
happened? Because there was so much trust placed in whoever is dictating the shots, which is director and cinematographer. So for me, even when on my shoots as a director, I'm very hands-on. I'm very similar like Jackie Chan. Like, if he doesn't like a shot, he'll be picking up the camera, he'll move it. He'll go, okay, this is it. So
Right.
that's why I work with my team, because other teams, they'll probably freak out. They go, "Oh, what'd you touch cameras for?"
Yeah.
But for
Yeah. Yeah.
me, I'm a very physical, like, I need
Hands on.
to shape, hands on, but also I need to also understand whoever I'm shooting, I need to find ways to film them flattering. Because some people might not shoot, you can't just put the camera there and it looks good. You have to assess who it is that you're shooting and
Right.
what it looks like on camera, and also the villains and how to shape it as well, rather than
Right.
shooting reality.
Right.
Shooting
Right.
reality is easy. You have magician and shape it through shots, lighting, motivations for your actors, or even how the fight scenes kind of like unfold. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. So let's talk about Echo 8, this amazing project, independent film project. Tell us the story, how you got started. I read you originally it was 10,000. That was originally what it started with, the original funding.
The whole
Oh
thing
my
is
God,
10,000, or actually
that's crazy.
10,000 US. Yeah, yeah. So
Wow. Wow.
originally, like, I was going to do another short film. It was called Flashback, which was a time traveling toilet where you go back and it's like Groundhog Day. You revisit the same fight scene after going to the toilet. It's just a bizarre concept. And then Elizabeth H. Vu, who's the writer, she's like, I'll be honest with you. You do a lot of short films. You need to step up. And I was like, what do you mean step up? We're doing a film. We're going to shoot this in 3 weeks. She's like, well, you've done too many of these. Why don't you do something more? And I was like, do what? She's like, do a feature film. I'm like, oh, really? Who's going to write the feature film, huh? And then she was like, you know what? If I write the feature film in like 2 weeks, will you shoot it? And I was like, game on. So we kind of egged each other. I was like, game on. And this is what it's going to be. And I want to have 3 assassins. I want it to be low budget. I want it to be predominantly in one space, a couple of characters. Can we put some tears in it somewhere? And then she ended up writing Echo 8. And we read it. We're like, damn, it's actually pretty good. Because I have to admit, as a filmmaker, if you don't have it in the script, oh my God, it's so hard. It is so hard to make a film good if it's not in the script. And if the script, the characters that you cast don't fit the dialogue, that's hard as well. You know what I mean? So Elizabeth is such a great wordsmith. She was able to write that. And then, so yeah, we ended up not doing the short film. And then within a month's time, I then ended up just jumping straight into the feature film. And to be honest, I don't know what I was doing. I thought we were making a home movie. I'm like, we'll just make it for fun. We'll see. 14 might be a piece of crap. I don't know. Let's just do this, right? Because we didn't have the full lighting setup and all that stuff. Most of the time, it's like a crew of 3 or 4, depending on the scenes. It's very small, right? And then when you end up finish shooting it, we put it together, we're like, it's kind of entertaining. As we kept on editing, and then we finished the product, we keep on watching it, but we end up having problems stopping from watching the whole thing. And we're like, wait a minute, why do we do this? Why do we keep on watching the whole thing through when we're supposed to only look at grading or sound? And then I showed it to another person. They're like, actually, your film has a really good watchability rate. And I'm like, what's that? Like, it's actually quite fun to watch. People can watch it from the beginning, even though it's a slow burn, but all the way to once midpoint, all the way to the end, it revs up. Even though it's shot in your house, the whole scene, most of the film is shot in the house. The outside part, the end fight scene on the driveway, it's very small, but on camera it looks big. But so we ended up doing that. We put into festivals. We won several, I think it's like a dozen film festival awards in more of the action genre kind of space. And then what happened after that was I was like, wow, there's traction on this. What if, should we do another project, different project, or should we do something similar? And Elizabeth's, get this, she's like, wait a minute, I've written a world for this. I've actually written a pentalogy. I'm like, what? 5 films? I'm like, okay, but hey, why don't you pitch the next 2 films that you're going to make? And I was like, why 2? Why can't we do 1? And I was like, well, every single time you do 1, it takes like 4 years until it finally gets out to distribution, right? 3-4 years or something. So why don't you do 2 at the same time, and in post-production just really push it, so by the time of end of 2025 you got 2 products. So I was like, that's pretty smart. And we still keep it in low budget. So I think it's going to be, each film's going to roughly be about 25 or 30K each. But the problem with the next 2 films is a huge cast. We have a cast of over like 60. The first one's only 3 main ones. So I have to really manage them. Like, I have to manage them. Otherwise, it's going to get chaotic. And yeah, we've got Shane Kasugi, who is on board as one of the producers, whose father is Cody Kasugi, original ninja in every, movie. So we have a lot of people coming on board, which is great. There's been a lot of trust placed on me and the team to deliver. And I know that, like, that's why every single night when I'm sleeping, I have to think of every element, story, character, fight scenes, and working with the different actors, costuming, like all these things I have to, really
Right.
be responsible for, even though we do
Right.
have other people. You know what? If it's your project, you have to take ownership. It's never anyone's fault. If it
Absolutely.
doesn't work out, it's you. That's how I
Right.
see it as. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Mm-mm.
Now, to tell anybody that hasn't seen Echo 8, where can they see it at?
It's now on I think YouTube movie and TV, but if you guys want to watch it on Tubi, because that really helps the filmmakers, because every click we get a little return back, which is great. It's on Roku, Fubu TV. There's actually 13 different platforms that they can get on to watch it, but Tubi is the main one. But if anything, check out www.echo8movie.com. We have all of the streaming platforms on there they can click onto, and just to follow our movement. And if they would like, they can also support us through our Indiegogo campaign, which we have, so that every kind of like dollar cents counts towards making 2 action films in
Now,
2025.
I've been following your Indiegogo. I mean, you started again with a baseline of 10,000, and now it's just unbelievable the amount of support that you've had.
Yeah, it's been crazy, because I think what happened was once we actually got our first 15,000 in, like, was it less than 24 hours. So
Wow.
it really did really well. And I think it's because like, I kind of know people and the project producers. I realized there's this thing where once a producer who likes your stuff and they back it up, they have producer friends who look at their stuff, and then they all kind of chip in, because a lot of the people that back Echo 8, I don't even know who they are.
Wow.
Like, it was like
Wow.
strangers, and myself, Elizabeth, and Takashi, we have to spend time also following up who's backing us up and why. Like,
Right.
because we feel uncomfortable if people are coming on board as an executive producer, we don't really know who they are. So we go back to them and go, are you sure that this is what you want to do? Because we really want to get to know why you want to be a part of this, and
Right.
how can this project help you, and want to know them personally as well. And because at least we're like family. It's not like someone comes in, gives us the money, we go, we're going to take your money. It's not
Right.
that way. We really want to develop a relationship, and if people aren't happy, we are happy to give the money back as well, because we never want people to feel bad with the
Right.
films that we make.
Right.
Yeah, so that's it's been great, that how the response we've got. And then on the outside, we've got different companies also giving us, like, in-kind venue, a little bit of funding support on the side, because
Awesome.
they want us to document this new way of making independent cinema that
Yeah.
is, your micro budget, nano budget, but also has a way to get to distribution, which is getting on the platforms without going through a distributor. So
Right.
Echo 8, we actually got offered by various distributors to go through their way, but then we decided to go, no, we're going to do it ourselves. We'll do our own deliverables, and then we put it onto Film Hub, and we'll see how that goes. If we get something, if we don't, doesn't matter. We're experimenting, but so far on Film Hub, the returns have been quite, pretty decent for the budget that we made it on. So we're pretty happy with that. So we're probably going to stick with Film Hub for the next 2 films. Yeah.
Do you feel now that the independent film genre, because again, it's been around, there's always been independent films, but the way that it is
Mm.
now, because 25 years ago you could make a film that looked half decent for $10,000 because the technology wasn't
Mm.
there, but now you have that. Do you feel that there's definitely more of a want and need for independent films, and you think that possibly maybe kind of coming to the forefront? Is that what you feel?
I feel like with what's happening in Hollywood, and even after me having meetings with various very high profile producers making really big multi-million dollar films, they're saying their system's kind of like being in threat, because it's not easy to
Right.
make one project that costs us like $80 million.
Right.
Very hard. And on top of that, people like us, do you think we will ever get a chance to be the leads in those types of films? No,
Right.
right? So therefore, but at the same time, because of the strikes and all that, there's been like a halt in production. So therefore, now there's still a demand for content, because people are streaming more. So
Right.
therefore, people like us, the more we make things, the more we get better at making things, I think we will, one, probably build a name, get a return back, and eventually probably Hollywood will probably start to hire us, because that's what I'm starting to feel. Different companies will hire myself or Elizabeth out to do story writing or action. And again, it's being able to find a niche, really find a niche for yourself. But to be honest, the greatest joy I have is making my own films, because I know exactly what's the story I'm making, as well as how everybody is going to fit in. And I always know if it stuffs up, if it doesn't work out, it's my fault. But if it is a success, it's everyone's win. So that's my sort of way of looking at it. So that's why a lot of people come on board. They work really hard. Or if the ones that come on board, if they're not, I can already assess it, because I'm very good at looking at people and go, okay, I can see what your strengths and weaknesses are, and let's work with your strength. Okay, you know what, this is not what you're good at. Okay, let's work around it. You know, so I never work with ego. So when I've worked in the past on projects where there's people coming on board, these real martial artists coming on board, and like, I'm a real fighter. And I'm like, okay, I know you are, and I really respect you for being world champion, this and that. But when it comes to screen and action on screen, it totally doesn't translate sometimes. And on top, sometimes if you look like you're fighting for real, it looks like you're hitting a potato sack. It doesn't feel like there's the kinetic energy doesn't come out. And in fact, I want you to have a look at what I'm seeing. So I'll bring them behind the camera lens and the monitor and do playbacks for them to understand what I'm trying to go for, and it actually build a trust. So a lot of times these other action actors then go, okay, fine, I'll trust you. I'm like, you should trust me, because trust me that I want to make you look good. It's not even about me. If I'm behind the camera, I want to make you look good. So if you want to look good, trust the fact that when we go for another take and we're doing something that's outside of the action norm, like a fighting norm, it's because we want to see that energy come into the screen. And especially fighters, a lot of times it's very, very like I call like a deadpan look. But in action, you gotta doing the eyes. I find in the eyes and in the breath. So the character's eyes and breath tells you the relationship between the different fighters. So for example, in a scene, if someone breathes steadily and they look steadily, you can tell in that moment that character is probably more in control than the other character who's breathing more heavily, who's looking more downcasted, who's really eyeing someone, like stuff like that. These are little micro things that I pick as I'm directing and so forth. But also body sizes. So example, if someone's really big, how do we choreograph it so that it fits to their size? How does the camera angles actually make them look good? Because sometimes if you're a big body, if the camera angle is not in the right angle, you sometimes cover a lot of the shots up. So you have to figure out, the camera person needs to go, okay, I can angle a little bit. Oh, now I can see the body a bit more. You know, what looks good on camera? How does the camera do wangles? I call wangles is something I love doing, because sometimes I do camera operating as well as understanding when the camera's still and when it moves, or when it shakes, or when it amplifies certain moves, but not too much, because then it gets a bit weird and seasicky. But knowing how to accentuate movement to tell a story. Yeah.
Wow. Now, Maria, you speak, unbelievable about your energy and talking about directing and this, but let's also remind the viewers, you're the star of Echo 8 as well. You're the female heroine, hero, let's talk about that, because did you, again, you're producing a film, you're directing the film, you're doing all these things, but to have the film take off the way that it did, and now you're the featured female hero. And to be honest, in the industry, that's not well represented. There's females are not represented really well as action heroes. Minorities are not really featured as, action heroes. So, how did that feel for you now, seeing the fruits of your labor and where Echo 8 is going? How do you feel?
This is the thing as a creative, right? This is one of my flaws, is that I hardly get time to just kind of decompress and just celebrate, because I'm always into something else. But I do feel a sense of, especially when little girls come up to me, like Maddie Sui, who was a little girl who had terminal brain cancer, when her father reached out to me because they knew that I did all these indie films, action films, and even for her, she was telling me how she likes to see strong girls and women on screen. That means a lot more to me, that a child or someone else can feel the energy and also makes them feel inspired to make things. So when Maddie made her film, she was inspired to be a superhero. She wanted to be strong, and even when, because we actually wanted her to be in Echo 8 Beyond, but unfortunately she passed away recently. But we did shoot a little scene of her 6 months ago when she was still around. So we're gonna commemorate, like, kind of like honor her and have her in our film in some capacity and dedicate that film to her as well. Because, you know, I think if we think about what we do and also the legacy of what we do, I think as humans, we then realize that, you know, what we do doesn't always have to have that struggle. And if it does have that struggle, there is a reasoning, there's a learning curve, there's an understanding of humanity in the moment of every struggle, because every struggle there's an opportunity. So when I think about it, I don't think of it as an action genre thing. I think of it as, wow, it's making people excited about the possibilities of low rent, I would say low rent assassins, because they don't have all the special effects and no car chase scenes. Because someone told me, you don't have any names, you don't have any car chase scenes, there's no explosions, but it still seems fun to watch. What is it about your film? And I'm like, it's the banter. It's just, you know, like, they're just, you know, they're not like, I'm a killer. They're yes, they're killers, but they're also, let's just say, kids or friends or colleagues, you know. So we kind of make it relatable for people who kind of, you know, watch and enjoy. So yeah, I want us to make films that the world can enjoy. And action genre isn't just for action fans, but for everyone to kind of, like, you know, sit back and immerse themselves in storytelling
and enjoy it. Exactly. Filming Echo 8, what do you think? Is there one thing that you could kind of pick out that was the toughest, you know, thing that you had to deal with in getting the movie done? Was there one thing that stood out that you were like, oh my God, this kept, you know, getting in the way, or was it a boundary or something that you had to overcome with making the film?
Yeah. The biggest challenges were always about location. Like, there was the club fight scene that only had 30 minutes and we didn't even have choreography. So, and I was working with new people who've never done action. And for that sequence, it was the most, it wasn't shot as well as the other sequences. But even then I had to go, okay, I know it's not going to be shot well, but I need to have some sort of quirk to it. So I was luckily enough that I subconsciously casted people who look really odd on camera as fighters, and these like overly big Asian guys who just did like that. But it just was funny. Like, it was just funny, that sequence. And for me, I was luckily enough, I wasn't overly stressed. I came in, I'm like, okay, we've got 30 minutes. Okay, guys, hi, my name is blah, blah, blah. Okay, you know what? I'm going to get you to this, and just quickly put it together, and without having any safety issues. That was always a main concern, because sometimes people who haven't trained to do action choreography, they might hit someone for real. And also, if they don't know the moves, I have to show them how to deliver the moves, when to lock and load. I call lock and load because when you punch someone, by the time you hit someone and it's like a little gap, it's basically unloaded. There's no power, but everything else has to kind of, like, you know, it has to move in a way that shows that grit. So I have to kind of like break that down for our new action actors to at least understand that, you know, in their bodies, to be able to choreograph that scene. So that was a hard one, because we're only 30 minutes running out of time. 30 minutes, we need to do that fight scene. That was probably a good 20 seconds or something, 20 seconds to 30 seconds of that sequence. We're in a tight corridor. You know, the camera operator is trying to capture everything, but then I also have to remember all our punch-in shots and how to separate the fight scenes and then stitch it together in editing. So in my head, I have to think very quickly as well. Yeah.
Did you do a lot of the editing, or you had an editing team?
Well, the thing is, I've got Therese Chen, who would do what we call the base editing, and then after that I would have Takashi, and then Elizabeth and other people to come in, and I would come in probably towards the end, because then I don't get too attached to the project and too attached to my face. Because, you know, when you're in it, it's so hard. I'm telling you, it's either you put yourself in it too much or you avoid yourself, because you're subconsciously, depending on how you feel about yourself. I'm naturally not a very confident person. I grew up not confident. I grew up insecure. So when I edit myself, sometimes I try to avoid myself, which is bad, because if Echo 8 is the main character, then I'm going to do shots away from camera. So therefore I decided to go later on to the editing. But as long as I knew when I'm shooting that I have all the editing points, it's easy edit. It's actually a fun edit for my editors. They're not going to scream at me, go, why didn't you remember this shot and that shot? I'm like, because I and we don't have like a storyboard. It's all in my head. Everyone just look at me. And if I'm not like, my head's not switched on, that day is going to fall apart. And luckily enough, like nothing fell apart. But I know myself, if I'm not like calm, I can't remember the shots and I'll just be making stuff up, and that's bad for the editor. So on those days, you have to really remain calm and go, okay, what's the shot? What's the shot? What's the problem? Let's fix the problem. And you know what? Let's quickly get things in the can. And a lot of people go, oh, no, you got to wait for the lighting. No, we've got 30 minutes. I don't have time for lighting. I can fix it up in post. Let's just go for shots and get it in the can. Maximum 2 takes, move on. So stuff like that. So it's like right under the gun.
Yeah. How and how long was your shoot overall? What was it from start to finish, roughly?
It was like 14 days.
Wow. Okay.
14 days. But then I think we did like 10 days or 12 days. And then there was COVID, because we actually started in that November of COVID. And then we had to wait for another year to do 2 days of pickups. Yeah.
And pickups.
We were in Australia, it was lockdown.
It was lockdown, right?
Because in Australia, lockdown was really bad. You can't even move 5 kilometers, 10 miles away. Otherwise, you get arrested. And, it's pretty bad in Australia. Yeah. So we had to wait and then do those 2 pickups. But, yeah, overall, it was very short. Short, quick shoot. It's not – a lot of people go, what? You did action for 14 days? That's crazy. I'm like, yeah, we had to, because we otherwise we would not have the capacity and the energy to keep going longer. But in fact, our sequel and prequel we're shooting next is roughly about 35 days for 2 movies. 35 days.
Now, when are you starting? Are you done? Obviously your Indiegogo is still active, but when are you looking to start filming? Hopefully,
we're filming January the 15th, and we're wrapping roughly about the 5th of March.
Nice.
So probably a 6-day shoot, 5-6-day shoot, and just get it all out. And it requires serious amount of planning, especially around our 60+ cast, and then crew. Crew's still going to be small, because I really like what we did in the first one. Even though people are like, oh, you can get a better, like DOP with all their gear. But for me, I rather have a DOP who I can work with, who understands my flow and understand that lighting paramount, the storytelling is paramount, and performance is paramount, and lighting, basic lighting, but not so much that we're waiting for an hour for lighting. The person bringing all his lights out of the gaffer truck, that's an hour already, and we're sitting there waiting. Whereas my team is that once we get on set, we get probably max half an hour set up, and we should be shooting by half an hour, so we're ready.
Ready to go. You guys are rocking and rolling the whole time, nonstop. Yeah. So what was your average shooting over those 14 days? What was your average day? Are you doing 10-hour days, 12-hour days, 14-hour days? Or
sometimes we did double. We would do like maybe probably a good 6-hour dinner break, and then come back and do a night shoot. So me probably another 4 hours on top of that, or 3 hours on top of that. So my team's that's why we wanted to keep the team smaller. And most of the teams are trained, so they're not going to be like, oh, I'm so tired, I'm so hungry, I'm like the I would say the entitled team, where they're used to having everything for them. We're not. We're sort of like, we're coming here, we're shooting, we have breaks, we eat, and then we go back and shoot again. But the great thing is, because with my team, they really love it. Like, I remember there was one time I was like, guys, oh man, I'm pushing you guys so hard, and I think we should call it a day. And they turned around, they go, no, we're going to get that shot, Maria. We're going to get that shot. And they pushed me to get my shot. And I'm like, awesome. Man, you guys, I was on breaking point. I'm feeling for you. And I didn't want you guys to suffer. And you turn around, you point at me, you get that shot,
That's awesome.
And that's what my team does. Because sometimes I get tired. I'm human. And I'm like, I don't know if I can go on. They come back and they go, no, we're going to give you the space to do what you need to do. And I'm like, thank you. So I put my heart out to them. And over the years, we've built such a great bond. And I always try to find ways to get them mainstream work, because it's really hard to get mainstream work and all that. So we all try to help each other out.
Now you and your crew, you have family, right? It's family that's helping you too, right?
Yes, yeah. So you got Elizabeth H. Fu, who's my blood sister, and then Takashi Hara, who's the husband. So the core crew is family, because then we can deal with our shit better, because it's like, we're family. You can't run away.
Yeah, yeah.
Maria, have you looked at this? No. Yeah. So that's good. And then but we're all different and good in different things. Takashi's very good at facilitating. He's very on time. I'm not sure if it's a very Japanese trait, but he's a very Japanese trait because he's very by the book.
That's awesome.
But he's he's the person that people would go to. Him and Elizabeth, they're very good at that. I'm not so much. People sometimes find me on set very cold, but it's only because I'm in my head. I'm thinking
Right.
of
Laser focused. Yeah, yeah.
I'm laser focused. I'm thinking about what I'm imagining what the scene I'm about to shoot, and also seeing everyone and how to shape them into that. So there's a lot of cognitive power. So when someone comes to me and asks me a random question, I get thrown off, and I'll answer them, and then I forget, oh, what's that vision? Where's it gone now? It's like clouds in my head. It just floats off. I have to bring it back again. Oh, here's the picture. All right, here's the picture, guys. So Takashi and Elizabeth, they're good at knowing that flow. And like Elizabeth's very good with story. So she'll be like, the way she would write, I'm a lazy script reader. When I read a script, if it's boring, I can't continue. So she's able to write it in a way that already I can see the picture in my head. She writes very economically. So as a director, I read it, I know what the shot is. So there's no floweriness. There's no extra. Dialogue's not like going to be waffly, or it's not going to be hammy, too cliche. But if it is, there's got to be a reason, because a lot of the dialogue in Kuwait is a bit kind of like, cliche, but fun and silly and quirky. And we wanted to play in that area of creating dialogue. It's not great dialogue, but it's fun to see and hear on screen and reinterpreted in a different context. And that did well for our audiences as well. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. So now you've been, this journey is, you've gotten to the place that you want to be. Now you're working on your prequel and the other series. What do you have set up? Is that the main focus now? I know you said you're talking about doing more content. I mean, are you even that far ahead? Like, hey, I have 8 movies set up. I'm ready to go. I mean, where are you at? And are you going to try to stay in the independent film genre, or what else are you looking to do?
I think for me, after I do the double feature films, which is the prequel called 5x5 and then the sequel called Echo Beyond, after that, I think in between that, I've got the short horror, which Elizabeth has already got a feature film set up for that, so that if it does well, the short, it demonstrates I can do horror. It might be my entry point into horror. But at the same time, personally, I love acting. That's my thing. I love it. I hate it. I'm scared of it, but it's a thing that it pushes me. It makes me grow exponentially. So I think I'm going to probably set some time aside to just go back and just go, okay, I'm just a performer. And then, because all my managers and my agents are like, why do you keep on making these indie films? We can't even slot in time to get you to audition for things. And this year I had to make a very mindful choice that I'm not going to audition for anything. So even though, I've finished a big Paramount series and all that, I'm like, no, I need to focus on my indie films. Oh yeah, but what if there's a big show? I'm like, if there was a big show, I have to say no to it, because my indie project is me and my family and my filmmaking family. And it means so much that, yes, there's other big budget films happening all the time and you can have a role, but what role does that mean? Because once that role's over, you're going to be back to the square one. But if you make your own projects, you've built a portfolio of you and your team's work. That means so much more, especially when we're the underdogs. You and I, we're like the underdogs, Mainstream, if they're going to cast us, they're going to give us your typical stereotype roles, right? We know they're not going to give us the big stuff unless we prove it through our indie films, to the point where they're like, we can't ignore these people. They're actually quite good. Let's find ways to work with them. And once we get to that level, there's a whole set of challenges. And I've been there for a little bit, and sometimes I feel like it's quite condescending, especially coming from indie, coming to a mainstream, and they're like, we're here, we're the experts, you're the indies, you're the cowboys, cowgirls trying to make films. But I'm like, but you're the one hiring us, so you need us. So you can't gaslight us to feel like we're bad. And then I have to also remind myself that actually I shouldn't feel bad, because I'm representing not myself now. I'm representing all the indie filmmakers who are trying to make these films. They get a little bit of attention from mainstream, but mainstream does not have any right to make us feel like we're less of a maker just because we work with, lower resources. We're more underdoggy, but at the same time, if they're working with us, there's a reason, because our content still has an audience. Yeah.
Right, right, absolutely. Well, I will tell you one of the things, and this is really one of the first times we got to talk, but I mean, your passion, the way that your dictation is and how you're explaining everything. I mean, you're jumping through the screen. So I know that the viewers are going to love that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I feel the passion, the way you're talking about, hey, we want to make sure that this person looks good and that person looks good. I think that's very, very important. So I know you're going to do great things. I'm excited. I did get a chance to watch Echo 8. I thought it was a great film. I'm excited to see your next two, and this horror short. I think that's a really cool genre to jump in as well. So I definitely wish you the best of luck. Is there any advice, Maria, before we wrap up, is there any advice as an independent film director, producer, and actress, any advice that you would give someone trying to start out? If you could give them any advice at all, because everybody's path is different, but if there's some advice that you could share with them, someone wanting to jump into independent film genre, what advice could you give them?
I think if anyone wanting to get creative, you have to understand that your pathway is not linear. It's never how you expect it to be. It's always going to have its ebbs and flows. The main thing is, how do you add value and be useful to all the things that you're a part of, okay? Especially when you first start out, you have to try everything. You shouldn't let your ego say, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm just an actor. I'm not going to do that. I'm just this and that. No, immerse yourself in as much things as possible. Get on set and be useful in every department. Be lovable. Be relatable, because not only you learn other people's roles and skills, you then have a better understanding when you start to make your own content, what it takes. What it takes to really see the success of a project. It's never an overnight success. It's like hundreds and thousands of micro decisions that you have to make that keeps on adding all these little wins along the way. And what I realize also is that if you can go beyond yourself, and when you look at the world, you see the world and how people's energy flows, you can then understand why some things work out and some things doesn't. Because even for me, sometimes I go, oh wow, how come this film, it's got like multi-million-dollar budgets, and how come it was not as successful? But if you break it down, it's because different people have different motivations. Some people work hard, some people don't, and everyone's energy and input levels are kind of a mismatch, and that creates tension. And then that tension, if it's not resolved, problems happen on set, story, actors, directors, fight team. And that's the thing. If you become a master of understanding how to flow energy around you and how to make something from nothing, man, you're going to be in it for the long run. Nothing will ever stop you. And even if you get out of film and get into another industry, you will still succeed. Yeah. Wow. That's my advice.
Very powerful, very powerful. For all my viewers tonight, again, you had the pleasure. We had Maria Tran all the way from Australia to come in. It's morning time over there for those of you that don't know the correct. So I appreciate her joining us in the morning. I'm so glad that we were able to make this happen. But again, Maria, we wish you the best with everything. I'm excited to see your new projects. And if you don't mind, if you could help me sign off, if you could just say, this is Maria Tran and you're watching Martial Arts Experience, and then we'll sign off.
This is Maria Tran, and you are watching the Martial Arts Experience. I love it.
Awesome. Good night, everybody. Maria, make sure to stay on for 1 second. Everyone else, have a good night, guys. Love you guys. Thanks for tuning in tonight.
Cool.